In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on February 21st, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. North Carolina versus Syracuse. North Carolina walks into this matchup with Syracuse on Saturday, February 21, 2026, carrying that familiar weight that follows a ranked team into a loud road gym where everybody in orange wants an upset. The number has them as the small road favorite, just that kind of narrow edge that tells you the market respects them, even with Syracuse sitting at 12-4 at home and very comfortable in the JMA Wireless Dome. Carolina has built a 20-6 overall record with a top-tier national profile and an offense living around 81 points per night, while Syracuse is sitting at 15-12 with scoring in the mid-70s that can still come in bunches. The simple record split looks clean, but the home and road split muddies it a bit, with Carolina only 3-5 away from Chapel Hill, which is exactly the kind of thing that makes people nervous about backing a road favorite in a building that can get loud in a hurry. That earlier meeting between these two still hangs over this game like a replay stuck in everyone's head, because Carolina raced out to a 32-point cushion at home, then spent the rest of the night almost inviting drama before closing it out at 87-77. That kind of script says two things at once: that the Tar Heels can create real separation when they lock in, and that they sometimes lose focus and give a team like Syracuse just enough hope to make everybody sweat. Add on the recent 82-58 loss at NC State, and you get why the coaching staff has been poking at the team's competitive spirit, especially when they leave their own building. Road environments in college hoops can feel like a different sport, and for a favorite, it turns into a test of maturity as much as talent. Here is the thing, even with those blemishes, the current version of Carolina still looks more complete than Syracuse when you zoom out a little. They clean the glass better, they move the ball with more purpose, and when they are expected to win, they mostly act like it, sitting at 17-3 when listed as the favorite. Syracuse, by contrast, has spent a lot of its time this season playing catch-up in every sense, only 3-9 when catching points and needing some wild rallies, like those double-digit comebacks at home against teams such as SMU, just to make games interesting. It shows heart, no doubt, but it also tells you they are often digging out of holes rather than dictating the whole way. Injuries layer another wrinkle onto Carolina's side of the story, with their star freshman front-court scorer sidelined by a broken hand and another important big man still in that uncertain zone after missing the last 2 contests with a lower body issue. On paper, that kind of news sounds like a pure downgrade, and it definitely lowers their ceiling, but it also nudges them towards smaller and more mobile lineups that can stretch the floor, switch more on the perimeter, and pull Syracuse's rim protectors away from their comfort zone. We already saw how that could matter when Carolina had the Orange chasing in space for long stretches of that first meeting, getting pretty much anything they liked before easing off the gas. Syracuse under Adrian Autry has leaned hard into being bigger, longer, and defense-focused, with real shot blocking and rim protection built into how they guard. That identity works beautifully when opponents play into their size, but it can look a lot more fragile when a team runs on them, forces those bigs to sprint the floor, and makes them defend in space. Over a full 40 minutes, this very short handicap starts to feel less like a coin flip and more like a question of trust, because the more balanced, better rebounding, higher ceiling side is still the ranked group that has already shown it can build a massive margin on this exact opponent when it strings possessions together. As our first pick for this matchup, the North Carolina Tar Heels to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The scoring profile for this matchup carries its own kind of tension, the kind you get when a game already has a history of turning fast, and the market still posts an aggressive expectation for points. Recent evidence between these two leans heavily toward a game that feels open and free, with that earlier 87-77 meeting landing on a combined 164 points and sitting well clear of what people anticipated going in. This has not been a one-off either, because when these programs share the court, the trend has leaned toward high scoring in most of their recent clashes, with the majority of those contests sailing past what projections suggested. Carolina's offense keeps feeding into that pattern, sitting around 80.9 points per game on roughly 47% shooting from the field, which is exactly the kind of blend of volume and efficiency that pushes scoreboards upward. Totals involving them have been tilting toward the higher side lately, with a strong run of contests landing above the projected number overall, and a similar tilt showing up when they go on the road. It is a team that plays with tempo, is not shy about letting it fly early in the shot clock, and can turn a modest run into a sudden avalanche when shots fall on back-to-back trips. Syracuse does its part too, and not just by scoring around 76 points per outing. Their track record on totals sits at 15-12, with a solid majority of recent games finishing beyond expectations, especially in that friendly home environment. The Orange feed off that crowd, using defense to spark transition, jumping passing lanes, and turning those moments into quick strikes that energize everyone in the building. Those wild comebacks against teams like SMU are not just about grit, they are about pace spikes, where the game suddenly becomes a track-style race up and down the floor. Carolina's defense, meanwhile, has not exactly been putting a lid on things lately. North Carolina State ringing up 82 on them, Miami getting to the rim often enough that a star forward ended up with that broken hand while trying to contest, and Syracuse carving into their lead late in that near comeback. All of it points to a group that can still be picked apart when focus wavers. You get this combination where one side naturally pushes the pace and scores in bunches, and the other side refuses to go quietly, keeps attacking from behind, and turns defense into quick offense at home. Those ingredients, Carolina's scoring punch and defensive lapses, Syracuse's willingness to run and lean into those spurts, and a shared history of games finishing with healthy point totals, all point in the same direction when you think about how this one is most likely to be played. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Arizona versus Houston. Arizona walking into Houston as the underdog feels a bit like showing up to a neighborhood cookout where everyone keeps reminding you that the home team never loses on their own driveway. The Cougars have turned that building into a comfort zone and a pressure chamber at the same time, stacking home wins and making every visiting team feel like they are taking an exam they did not fully study for. That edge is real, the crowd is real, and the confidence that comes from years of protecting home court is real too. Arizona still brings its own kind of swagger into that chaos. This is a group sitting at 24-2 overall and 11-2 in conference play, used to the feeling of having a big target on their back and still showing up ready to trade punches. They run the floor, they rebound like missed shots are personal, and they play with the body language of a team that has already seen plenty of bright lights and loud gyms. Honestly, that matters just as much as any number on a board, because experience in those pressure spots keeps you from flinching when the game tightens. Houston leans into a very physical, detail-heavy style. They bump cutters, they crowd ball handlers, and they make you work through your second and third option on a lot of trips. That kind of approach usually squeezes games into tighter margins rather than letting them spin into easy, double-digit comfort zones. Arizona, for its part, is comfortable in that sort of grind because the rebounding gives them extra chances and the offense does not fall apart when the first look is taken away. Let me explain. When a team can stay on the glass and still get decent looks late in the clock, it tends to hang around even when the home side throws its best punch. The mix of Houston's home dominance and defensive toughness with Arizona's experience, scoring punch, and toughness on the board sets this up like the kind of matchup where each run gets answered instead of breaking the game open. You can almost picture those final few minutes, crowd roaring, whistles flying, and every possession feeling massive while the scoreboard refuses to separate very far. That is exactly the kind of script where the points sitting next to a confident underdog become very hard to ignore. As our first pick for this matchup, the Arizona Wildcats to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Arizona's offense has been one of the most productive units around, pushing pace, moving the ball, and piling up points somewhere in that high 80s neighborhood on a regular night. They love to turn rebounds into early offense, they get up the floor quickly, and they are comfortable with different players initiating and finishing possessions. It is the kind of attack that, in most gyms, pulls everyone into a faster rhythm almost whether they like it or not. Houston's defense is built to be the counterweight to that. They slow your first action, they contest shots without panicking, and they rotate like a group that has run the same shell drills over and over until it became second nature. Games in that arena often feel heavy, with long possessions, late clock decisions, and long stretches where both sides are probing instead of racing. You know that feeling when you look up and think the score should be higher based on the effort you are seeing, but the numbers on the board are still lagging behind the energy. That is the kind of vibe Houston's style creates a lot. The emotional piece adds another layer. This is a huge matchup, rankings involved, conference stakes sky high, and every player has heard all week how much this one matters. In spots like that, coaches usually shorten the bench a little, lean on veterans, and call more set plays to make sure every trip has a clear plan. That means more timeouts, more drawn-up actions after dead balls, and fewer wild, end-to-end stretches where both teams just trade quick shots. It might feel intense, it might look frantic at times, but the actual scoring pace can still stay under what the raw talent suggests. Arizona's firepower is real and Houston's resistance is just as real, and when those two collide, both sides usually have to give up something. If Houston manages to slow the tempo even a bit and Arizona is forced into more half-court possessions than it really prefers, the total number of points starts to look a lot more modest than the offensive highlight reels would make you think. It becomes less of a free-flowing track meet and more of a careful, possession-by-possession contest where getting to a certain scoring range feels like a serious achievement rather than a baseline expectation. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Alabama versus LSU. Alabama walking into Baton Rouge for this matchup feels less like a quiet conference game and more like someone trying to hold a plastic chair in a wind tunnel. This group sits at 19-7 overall and 9-4 in league play, coming off that wild double overtime win over Arkansas that looked closer to a summer showcase than a careful, half-court chess match. The energy from that kind of game does not just disappear overnight. It usually makes a fast team even more willing to push the tempo, shoot early in the clock, and lean into what it already does best. Their identity is crystal clear: hit the gas, spread the floor, and let the threes fly while everyone else scrambles to keep up. They score at a pace that puts them right at the top of Division I, and they fire away from deep so often that it feels like every other possession ends with someone stepping into a long ball with zero hesitation. Honestly, it can look a little reckless at times, but that same chaos is exactly why their runs come in waves, and those runs are what stretch out margins on the scoreboard. LSU sits at 14-12 overall and 2-11 in conference play, and the path has gotten a lot rougher without Deaton Thomas Jr. at the point and Jalen Reed up front, both shut down for the season. That is not just a couple of rotation guys missing, that is the player who was steering the offense and a major piece in the front court rotation, which forces everyone else into slightly uncomfortable roles. You can see how that kind of reshuffle makes it harder to handle constant pressure, especially when the opponent does not stop coming at you for the full 40 minutes. On the other side, Alabama still has its main engine humming, with LeBaron Philon Jr. listed as probable yet recently logging 41 minutes and stacking up 35 points in that Arkansas marathon, which tells you how central he is to what they run and how hard he is pushing the pace. When the primary creator is both aggressive and available, the rest of the system tends to fall into place, and that is exactly what gives their style its bite on the road. History between these two programs has leaned heavily in one direction, with Alabama taking 9 of the last 10 meetings and doing it while averaging close to the high 80s in scoring against LSU sitting in the mid-70s. That kind of track record matters, not just because of the numbers, but because one locker room walks in with the memory of success and the other knows it has been on the wrong end of these matchups more often than not. Put all of this together, the live wire offense, the healthier engine at guard, the shorthanded LSU rotation, and a recent series that has tilted toward one side, and you get a matchup where the aggressive, high-octane team has every reason to press the gas and try to separate on the scoreboard again. As our first pick for this matchup, the Alabama Crimson Tide to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Alabama games already feel like they are being played with an extra possession or two baked into every minute, with an offense that lives over 90 points a night and a defense that gives plenty back, which means their typical outing ends with a very high combined total. They space the floor, shoot a huge volume of threes, crash the glass, and foul more than a coach probably likes, and all of that creates extra trips to the line, extra possessions, and extra chances for the scoreboard to keep climbing. LSU is not some low-scoring, walk-it-up opponent either, even in a tough year. They still put up solid offensive numbers and give up their fair share on the other end, so their games rarely feel like rock fights. Without Thomas Jr. and Reed, they lean more on attacking in space, finding mismatches, and drawing contact, which actually fits pretty well with a game that turns up and down and features a lot of whistles and free throws. Inside the Pete Maravich Assembly Center, with that home crowd ready to roar at every run, the pace usually finds another gear. Runs tend to feed off noise, a quick three turns into a mini avalanche, and neither side wants to be the one stuck in cement while the other is racing out in transition. Here is the thing, when you combine a top-tier scoring machine with a defense that leaks points and pair it with an opponent that can still answer enough on the offensive end, you get a script that leans more toward offensive fireworks than defensive poetry. Head-to-head, recent meetings between these two have already leaned toward high scoring, usually landing in the mid-160s in combined points, and that was before this particular version of Alabama started playing at such an extreme pace. That history does not guarantee anything, but it does show that these rosters and styles have a habit of creating open floors, quick shots, and long stretches where stops are hard to come by. There is always the small risk that a lopsided scoreboard could drag things down late, with longer possessions and fewer fouls, but this Alabama group under this coaching staff rarely shifts out of its identity, whether the game is close or stretched out. They keep shooting, they keep pushing, and that stubborn commitment to pace keeps the door open for late-scoring bursts, broken plays, and last-minute free throws that matter to the total even when the winner is already clear to everyone in the building. With one team built to play the fastest style in the country, the other capable of keeping up just enough, and both defenses willing to trade stops for extra possessions, this matchup shapes up as the kind of game where the scoreboard operator is as busy as anyone on the floor. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Michigan versus Duke. If you could handpick a late February matchup that feels like it was built for March, this would be it. Number 1 Michigan, sitting at 25-1 and steamrolling through the Big Ten, stepping away from league play to see number 3 Duke at 24-2 and ruling the ACC under the bright lights at a neutral floor in Capital One Arena in DC. On the surface, the number that has Michigan as the slight favorite makes sense. The market has watched them stack win after win, including a long streak that features a convincing road win at Purdue, and several victories over top 10 opponents, and that kind of body of work tends to nudge a team into that small favorite territory even on a neutral floor. It is not just a vibes thing, either. The efficiency data that bettors scroll through on KenPom backs up what you see when you sit down and watch them on a random Tuesday night. Michigan sits at the very top of those rankings with a huge net rating, combining a top 5 offense with the number 1 defense in the country, and they are more than happy to play fast when the game opens up. They push the tempo into that top tier nationally, they are ruthless on shots inside the arc, and they look perfectly comfortable turning a normal game into a track meet whenever they sense the other side wobbling. That is the kind of personality that wears on teams, not just for a few minutes, but all the way into the last media timeout. Duke is hardly some plucky underdog in this thing. They sit right behind Michigan in those same advanced rankings, second overall, with a top 10 offense, the number 2 defense, and an almost absurd success rate on 2-point attempts that hovers around the low 60s in percentage. The twist is that they prefer to get there by playing a little slower, closer to a grind, where they run their stuff, pick their angles, and keep the game in a half-court rhythm instead of a full sprint. So you have one team happy to hit the gas and another that likes to tap the brakes, and that stylistic tug of war is part of what makes this matchup such good television. Health-wise, nothing wild is lurking here at the top of the rotations. Both staffs are working with the cores you have been watching all season, and because college hoops does not have in-season trade shuffling stars around like the NBA, the identities of these teams have been built with the same main pieces from November through now. Any dings that exist are more in the depth conversation than in the headline names, which matters, but it does not fundamentally change who these teams are in a matchup like this. So why lean toward the favorite having a real chance to clear that small number rather than just squeak by? because Michigan has made a habit of turning these high-profile games into statements by the time the buzzer sounds. They have piled up more than 20 wins by double figures, with a hefty chunk of those by 20 points or more, and they keep doing it with a massive front court and real depth that keep the pressure cranked all game long. There is a pattern here, and bettors love patterns almost as much as they love odds boosts. Duke's offense looks fantastic when it can live at the rim, but Michigan is built about as well as any team in the country to slam that door shut. They sit first nationally in defensive efficiency, near the very top in effective field goal defense, and they have the length to challenge shots without constantly needing emergency help. That kind of structure makes it harder for even elite rim attacks to keep getting clean looks as the game wears on. On a neutral floor, where scoring runs tend to snowball and the more physical, deeper team usually shows up in the final 8 minutes, that profile matters. Michigan's style tilts toward winning the rebounding battle, getting to the free throw line more often, and turning those classic "it was tight for 30 minutes" scripts into suddenly this is a comfortable margin, finishes instead of coin flip endings. When both teams lean into who they have been all season, the matchup points toward the favorite having enough tools, both stylistically and physically, to not only survive the moment but also stretch things just enough by the end. As our first pick for this matchup, the Michigan Wolverines to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Michigan has been pouring in close to 90 points per game, sitting near the top nationally in scoring, sharing the ball with a high assist count, and turning live ball chances into easy transition buckets that make coaches mutter on the sideline. Duke holds up its end too. They are putting up plenty of points themselves, and the way they finish inside the arc is almost comical at times, with that very high 2-point percentage creating run after run when they get comfortable. On the surface, this sets up like the sort of matchup where casual fans watch the ticker and expect the combined total to balloon without much resistance. Here is the thing, though. Both defenses are elite, not just good enough. We are talking about the number 1 and number 2 defenses in the advanced efficiency world, the kind of units that are built specifically to ruin the offensive party on nights like this. On top of that, this is being treated inside those locker rooms like a dress rehearsal for the postseason, on a neutral floor with a national audience watching. Games with that kind of feel often look different from a random January shootout. In matchups like this, the pace can be a little sneaky. It might feel fast, because every possession is tense and every made shot or turnover gets a huge reaction, but the actual number of trips up and down the court often ticks down. Rotations tighten, scouting reports are sharp, and both coaches are obsessed with getting the defense set and not giving up easy transition chances. Michigan has shown it can fly when the game opens up, but it has also been comfortable grinding when the opponent is elite and the stakes feel big. Duke already prefers a more methodical rhythm, and when a fast team and a slow team meet at this level, it is usually the slow side that pulls the tempo closer to its comfort zone. The neutral site setting adds another wrinkle. Different shooting backgrounds can mess a little with rhythm jumpers, especially early, and both defenses are going to pack the paint and scheme to take away the easy high-percentage twos that normally fuel these offenses. So you still get star power and high-level shot making, but you also get long, deliberate half-court trips, late clock possessions, and a whole lot of contested looks instead of layup lines. That is where the total starts to feel a bit inflated compared to the most likely script. The reputation of these offenses encourages a number that leans into the idea of a classic shootout, but the combination of two elite defenses, a slightly slower real pace, and the pressure of a postseason-style environment all pull the game towards something tighter and lower scoring than the marketing suggests. You can root for highlights and still recognize that the math favors a slightly more muted box score when the dust settles. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Iowa State versus BYU. Iowa State walks into Provo feeling like a team that has figured itself out, and everyone in the building is going to feel that from the opening tip. That 23-3 overall record and 10-3 mark in Big 12 play is not just pretty numbers on a graphic. It is the result of a group that has handled heavyweights and made it look steady, not fluky. Beating Kansas by 18 and then edging Houston in tight winning time showed they can handle both a blowout script and a possession-by-possession grind without losing their identity. The way Iowa State plays on offense feels calm and ruthless at the same time. They are hitting more than half their shots from the field, right around that 50.5% mark, and almost 40% from deep, which is top-tier efficiency with very little wasted motion. They share it with over 18 assists a night and sit around 10.5 turnovers, which tells you the ball is finding the right hands and then usually staying attached to the right decision. That is the kind of profile that survives a loud road crowd because it does not depend on one guy bailing them out. It rests on habits they repeat possession after possession. Defensively, they bring that annoying, sticky effort that coaches love and scorers hate. They rebound well enough to finish plays, they stack nearly 9 steals per game, and they force opponents to run offense deeper into the clock than they would like. Recent showings against elite programs where they held Kansas in the mid-50s and kept Houston in the 60s show that this is not just a reputation, it is who they are right now. That sort of connected defense tends to travel, especially when the group already believes it can walk into any building and dictate contact levels and matchups. BYU, on the other hand, is walking into this one with a mix of excitement and stress. The Cougars sit at 19-7 overall and 7-6 in league play, and they have turned the Marriott Center into a tough place with that 10-2 home record, but the roster has shifted at a bad time. Losing Richie Saunders for the season matters emotionally and tactically because he brought scoring, toughness, and a steadying presence that let everyone else slide into cleaner roles. Now the weight leans even harder on that explosive scoring duo on the perimeter, and while those two can light up any defense, every scouting report now circles them in thick red marker. The market still remembers BYU's wild scorelines and fun pace, but against a defense like Iowa State's, that free-flowing style is much harder to sustain for 40 minutes. Those recent numbers against top teams, where BYU pushed but still came up a bit short, hint at a squad that fights hard yet struggles to close cleanly against the most complete opponents. Iowa State brings balance, better form against elite competition, and a style that punishes mistakes instead of letting them slide. In a setting like this, in late February, that blend usually matters more than crowd noise and streaky shot making. As our first pick for this matchup, the Iowa State Cyclones to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. BYU games recently have carried that summer pickup game energy, with totals soaring into the 170s and even 190s, and it is easy to picture another track-style night just off that memory alone. You see the highlight clips, a couple of deep threes, and your brain starts to fill in the rest of the box score before the ball is even tossed. The real rhythm of Iowa State's offense tells a slightly different story, one that leans more controlled than chaotic. They score in the low 80s on average, but they get there through efficiency, not pure volume. They take around 60 shots per game, shoot over 50% from the field and close to 40% from three, and their turnover numbers stay low. That combination creates longer, more deliberate trips where they work the ball, get a good look, and then sprint back to set their defense. Fast breaks still happen, but they are not living in a constant full sprint, and that kind of structure often trims a few possessions off the total flow of the game. Their defense adds another quiet break on scoring. Those 8+ steals a night can spark runouts, sure, but more often, the pressure forces opponents into late clock heaves and ugly second options. When a team like BYU gets knocked out of its first read over and over, the result is not more points. It is more empty trips where the ball sticks and the shot quality drops. That is the kind of thing you feel in the arena as a slow tightening, not in one big moment, but in a series of possessions that end with long rebounds and a little frustration. BYU without Saunders has also shifted their offensive shape. The scoring ceiling is still high with that talented backcourt, but the margin for error got thinner. The staff now has to manage rotations with more care, lean on guys in slightly unfamiliar roles, and stomach a few more possessions where the ball does not find quite the right player at quite the right time. In big games lately against strong defenses, the point totals have slipped a bit from those wild early season peaks, which hints at a group adjusting on the fly rather than running the same freewheeling script. Games with this kind of emotional charge, where one team is protecting a special season and the other is hunting a defining win, often tighten up as the second half wears on. Timeouts stretch longer, each possession gets coached and recoached from the sideline, and players feel that weight in how patient they are before they pull the trigger. One or two cold stretches, a few missed free throws from a group that has not been great at the line, and suddenly the total is chasing the game instead of staying ahead of it. The ingredients here point more toward a measured, half-court focused night than another free-for-all shootout, with more grind and a little less fireworks than the surface narrative suggests. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.